Richard Branson, who many people will know as the founder of Virgin, which is quite a huge financial business empire in Britain. And I'm not actually advocating doing this, but one of the things that got him on his way was when he was a little tiny kid, his mother, rather than saying to him, "Get down off that tree right now," would say, "Go higher, go higher. You can go higher. I bet you can't reach that branch. Go right up to the top of that tree." And little Richard would climb up, and he was quite frightened. He would go right up to the top of his tree, and his mother would say, "That's wonderful. You're such a brave boy. You can do things that no one else can do. You are great. You are the best kid in the whole world." Now he's a billionaire. Okay. His mother, and this is the kind of thing that people get locked up for now, would take this little kid, drop him off in a different neighborhood, and say, "Now, let's see if you can find your way home." You know? And little Richard would wander around the streets and had no idea what was happening and knock on a door saying, "I'm lost." Okay. And then the person would take this little Richard back home to where he came from, you know. And then his mother would say, "That's wonderful. You solved the problem. You did so well. You are so great. You can do anything." And he's a billionaire. And that's because his mother was so crazy.
She programmed him well, didn't she?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But most mothers now tell their children, "Don't go out of the front door because something terrible is going to happen to you.
They live in fear.
Don't talk to that stranger because they're going to do something terrible to you. Don't take any risks." You know, I have a friend of mine in England. He's somebody who used to be my climbing partner because I've done a lot of rock climbing in my life. His name's Paul, the wonderful man. A lot of people sign off their letter saying "take care." He signs off his letter saying "take risks."
I love it.
Isn't that great? We should be. Life is a risk. Life is, everything you do is a risk. When you catch the bus or you take your car to go back to where you're going, it's a risk. When you get in a plane to go back to Holland, it's a risk. When you commit yourself to your husband or to your partner, Richard, it's a risk. By publishing this video, it's a risk. Life is risky. You're never going to get out of it alive.
Yeah.
You're never going to get out of life alive. Life's a risk. So enjoy it.
Just give me a bit of background again on Project Camelot and how you got started and what inspired you to go on this journey.
Right, I'm trying to. The reason for the pause there is I'm thinking about what level to go this into.
Take it as long and as deep as you like.
Using whatever language you might choose. I'm a wanderer, I'm a volunteer, this is what I came here to do, I'm pretty certain. And just as many people watching this video and you yourself will recognize that when you finally think, okay, now I've arrived at something which I really want to do, you look back on your life and you realize that all the experiences you had, even the ones that weren't particularly pleasant at the time, were all part of the training program, which you chose in your plans. Like, that's why I did this. That's why I did this. This is why I experienced that. This is why I spent 2 years with this terrible person. This is why I spent 1.5 years in this terrible job. This is why I chose this terrible parent or whatever. Because it made me who I am today, that helps me now with this resource space that I've got to do this job now. And it's all, but at the time we don't understand what's happening. We think, oh, poor me, why am I doing this? It's all part of the plan. Now I recognize that so much of what I experienced has actually led me to this point. I spent the first 8 years of my life in Africa. I worked in the Outward Bound schools. I was a leadership and a team building trainer. My mother was a writer who coached me in writing and presentation skills. She was an author. She always used to say I should write a book. I haven't done that yet, but there's a book in here waiting to come. You bet there is. It's just a matter of time. And in my management consultancy career, I learnt how to handle executives, how to handle people in authority, how to handle meetings in large corporations, how to present it's like all of this suddenly comes into play. And so I've arrived at the point where this is just a wonderful playground where I can start to deploy all of these skills and abilities that at the time I just thought I was being human being trying to make it all work. But this is what it was all about. Now, I had an abduction experience 20 years ago, which in itself is a very long story. And I don't understand all of that story. And many people who've had abduction contactee experiences don't understand those stories either. And rather than feeling that, oh my God, something terrible happened to me and these guys were abusing me when they carried me out of my tent in the Himalayas at 7,000 meters in December 2001, I was abducted out of my tent. This was not a military operation. This was, I was floated over the glacier in the middle of the night when the temperature was about -40 or -50.
Were you conscious when this happened? Did you see it?
Yeah, I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. It's a standard abduction experience in a rather unusual place, and it's a very, very complicated story at that time, and I still don't understand the ins and outs of it. But I'm as sure as I can be that what was happening then was this was part of a setup. It was part of a setup for what I'm doing now, and what I'm doing now. It's like I don't know what they were doing, but it was probably a software upgrade. It was probably a software upgrade. Of some kind. I think that some of the abductions that take place are probably hardware or software upgrades. I can't prove it, it's just my own silly idea, but that's how I have resolved that situation temporarily for myself. At that time, I had a girlfriend called Angie, that was a very, very strange story, and I had a number of strange experiences which led me to conclude that she was not fully human in the accepted sense of the word. Now, I don't even know what I mean by that, but there was certainly something inside her that was.
Is this the one that grew like 2 feet overnight?
She grew 2.5 inches.
Oh, right.
Overnight, not 2 feet.
The story gets blown out.
2.5 inches. And I don't know whether it was overnight or not, but it was certainly within 2 weeks. I mean, it's one of these things that's medically impossible. And every now and then she used to say to me things that seemed to come from somewhere else, didn't seem to come from this little 26-year-old girl doing an ordinary job who looked walking down the street like any other 26-year-old girl. Every now and then she would say something that came from a completely different place. And one of the things that I remember, she said to me over breakfast one morning. It was like we had the coffee and the toast on the table, and then she suddenly looked up at me and she said, "The earth is a very beautiful place and it won't always be this way."
It's quite random.
And it's like, what? And then she kind of flipped back into her 26-year-old little girl mode, and she didn't even acknowledge that she'd said it. She would say things like that. She would say to me, she said, "You're a very special person. We won't always be together, but I will always love you." And she would say this to me over and over again. She'd say, "You're very special, you're very special." And at first I thought she was just being nice.